Yeah, Warriors, we're drinking it down. Raise your voices and stare at this town. We're the champions of craft beer sport. Tall Can Audio, we hold down the fort.
All right, away we go here on a post-game edition of the Tall Can Audio podcast for the Ottawa Senators. Not something we are still known for here, as has been pointed out numerous times. I am too old to be staying up late and doing post-game shows, especially for something as lopsided as what happened for the Sens here against the New York Rangers. But here we are. And if you'll allow me to pull back the curtain just a little bit, I might have pre-recorded the second half of this show before the Sens game. So a little smoke and mirrors here, but let's get right into it. Me and the Octopus from the Great Lakes Brewery want to fight. You know the deal. We're on social media at Tall Can Audio. Would love to hear from you there. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you're hearing us right now. And I have noticed, certainly on Spotify, our call for a few more podcast reviews has panned out pretty well. So if you haven't done that, wherever you're hearing us right now, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you are, it always helps out the show. We'd love it if you'd leave a rating and a review there. We have certainly ramped up the call for more of them, and you've answered, like I said, certainly on Spotify. So keep them coming on any platform. We'd love to hear it. Apologies, it has been a little quiet around here over the course of the week, as some of you ruthlessly pointed out on the Monday show. My voice just not quite there. I've been sick, but not, I don't know, I've mostly been feeling not bad for the last several days, but at times my voice would just crumble. I still had something going on in my throat there or whatever. So didn't book much in terms of guests for the week. It's been a little rough, but like I said, feeling mostly better after getting some sleep here over the last few nights. Or at least trying to. Of course, the Leafs are fucking late night games. That is what it is. But yeah, that's the reason it's been quiet around here over the last little bit. But yeah, it's feeling mostly okay, but just trying to recover. And look, you can battle through a lot of symptoms, a lot of things, but when your voice keeps falling apart, not much you can do, right? I want to talk some baseball here in a second, and I'm getting greedy. I'm getting the sense a lot of you are feeling greedy, and maybe a little overly greedy, to be honest with you. The Blue Jays, if we're being real, with the signings that they've already had with Kozuma Okamoto, with Dylan Cease, with Tyler Rogers, with Cody Ponce, it's been an A offseason for the Blue Jays. And I'm like the rest of you. I'm still out here hoping to see Kyle Tucker sign, and I'm getting nervous when I see the numbers creeping up that the insiders are saying that the Mets are offering and this and that. And yet I'm also seeing some tweets that are like, oh, just go do it, Shatkins, or just give up. And you're like, just give up? You're coming off a World Series appearance and have had a fantastic offseason thus far. And so I'm worried a little bit that this is getting out of hand. And I think some of that stems from how long Kyle Tucker has been out there. And I don't know whether he's going to sign here or not. Here being north of the border in a general sense. But I think we have to be careful. In some previous offseason, and look, I think for the most part, the Blue Jays, since 2020, 2021, have done a really nice job of adding to this team in free agency. I think they've shot down and killed a lot of the Blue Jays. I know we're supposed to talk about baseball in a little while. We'll get to the Sens in just a second. I think they've killed a lot of that shitty narrative that they're cheap or that they won't go out and spend. They have spent, and this already has been a good offseason. An A off season. But Kyle Tucker would be the icing on the cake. I am with all of you on that. I'm fighting hard to reject the premise that if this doesn't work, if this doesn't happen, Atkins and Shapiro have failed. Because this has already been a good off season. Let's all work hard to keep that in mind as this comes down. And this isn't one of those other years where you're like, Rob and I have fought on here all the time about whether they were used as a pawn for Ohtani or for Soto. And I don't think those things are what happened. I do think the Jays were in on those guys. Even if you disagree with me on that, and you do feel like they're a pawn in the Kyle Tucker thing, which again makes no sense to me because they have been the only team throughout the offseason linked to this. Even if they do miss out on that, even if you do believe they're a pawn in on Kyle Tucker, it's still been a great offseason. So let's try to remain level-headed here. It will be a disappointment if Bichette ends up with the Phillies and Tucker ends up with the Dodgers or the Mets or something like that. But it doesn't mean this was a bust of an offseason. Anyway, it was a bust of a night for the New York Rangers, and it's been sort of boom or bust for the Ottawa Senators here for the last little while. And look, we talked about it at length. We're not going to go back on it. Last week was a tough week for the Sens, and certainly Thursday and Saturday weren't any better. They were under the gun for a bunch of reasons on and off the ice. Monday they go out, and I'll be honest with you, I watched that. I was back and forth between the Sens and the Charge on Monday night. I wasn't over the moon with the Sens' performance against the Canucks. I have time for Travis Green's description of the game afterwards where he said we could have been up 4 or 5-0 after the second. You weren't. But they did outperform Vancouver in those first two periods. I thought the third period was a little more evenly played, but they did what they had to do. They locked it down. The Canucks scored to make that game tight, but the Sens didn't buckle and locked it down the way they should. But I was surprised on Tuesday with how glowing some of the reviews were in the local media. Some of those people are friends of the show, some are not. It doesn't matter. I was feeling like, are we seriously this excited over scraping by Vancouver? And like I said, I understand that, yeah, but it could have been 4-0 after 2. Yeah, but it wasn't. And I get it. You can get goalied in either direction. Yours is great. Yours is terrible. Theirs is great. Theirs is terrible. These things happen. But Vancouver's been awful. And frankly, for a couple of weeks, the Sens have been awful. And so you take a win any way you can get it. And if the reports and the opinions and whatever else on Tuesday had just been what so many teams go through, what the Sens have been through before, what every team has been through before, hey, you know what? Sometimes before you get rolling again, you got to grab an ugly one. If that had been the feedback, you'd go, yeah, well then here we go. Because the Sens did get the win, and they deserved the win. They were full value for that win. But to claim that that was some sort of masterpiece, and then I'm hearing talk about, like, man, the Sens are going to be a tough out in the playoffs. And you're like, in the playoffs? Well, that was very much the playoffs. I didn't mean for that to be a thing. We talking about practice and whatever other memes you got. I'm a man. I'm well over 40. And look, take the win. It might be the way you start to build. I just thought some of the reviews on Tuesday of how that game had played out were overly glowing for a 2-1 victory over the spiraling Vancouver Canucks. The conversation on Tuesday ahead of the Rangers game about who to start in goal was interesting. I didn't know how that was going to play out. Levi Merilainen going back-to-back last week didn't go all that well. I sort of sided with a lot of the, experts. I side with experts. I am not one. That, hey, it didn't go good last week. Let's not do that again. And in the same vein, you're like, Okay, then here's 37-year-old James Reimer, who hasn't played all year other than a little bit of preseason for the Leafs, a little bit of Spangler Cup for Canada, and one very bad game for the Belleville Senators. So it wasn't an easy decision for Sens coaching staff, I'm sure. But I was on the side of just put Reimer in there and grit your teeth and hope. And now we've seen tonight, Merilainen, well, he was fine. He gave up 4, but you scored 8, so it's fine. Reimer might have given up 4 or 5, but if you scored 8, it was going to be fine. But no one knew going into the game that the Sens were going to score 8. So it was legitimately a tough decision. And they look full value for it, I guess, right? As long as you're going to score like that. The Rangers are spiraling as bad as the Canucks. And you could have said going into this back-to-back as bad as the Sens. But the Sens have managed to pull their nose up, get 4 points in the last 2 nights in a still pretty compact Eastern Conference. And all of a sudden, things look a little less daunting for the Senators. We'll see how the schedule fleshes out here over the next couple hours. There's a couple of late games here, or just one, I guess. But we'll see how things shake loose and where the standings land. I haven't had time to check. But 4 points in 2 nights for the Ottawa Senators when they badly needed them. And in 2 very different games. You play the Canucks, who were spiraling, as I said, and you grind one out 2-1. You play the Rangers, who are spiraling, and it's sort of a fucking shootout, 8-4. So 2 very different games, but the Sens got the right result in both of them. And so I do think when you're in that situation, they don't ask how many, they just ask how. No, it's the opposite. They they don't ask how. They just ask how many. No, I've got it backwards. I think it depends on what conversation you're talking. The Sens won 2 in a row, 4 points. Who cares? 2-1 and 8-4. It is what it is. Get your points, which is all that matters right now. I got to tell you, I was texting with Rob as the game ended, and Brady had scored his 200th. And I know he's been a bit of a lightning rod here over the last couple of weeks, coming out of the injury. Is he saving himself for the... I'm saving myself for someone special. We've talked about it. I just think he's struggling. But he scores his 200th. And they mentioned on the Sportsnet broadcast, which was not a good broadcast. We've talked about this before. I sometimes push back on the Ottawa fan base who suggests that they might get shafted a little bit on Sportsnet. They got shafted a little bit on Sportsnet. I think you're on a national game on Wednesday. But they did mention in the post-game segment, post-game interviews, that Brady had gotten to 200 goals faster than Matthew. And maybe it's just me. Maybe you, the good Sens fan out there, already knew he was on pace to do that, right? He's taking down enough Ottawa content to know that that was the pace he'd set. I'm surprised. Because we all talk about Brady as a bit of a unicorn in this league. And that term gets overused, but it's because there's not a better one to describe this guy. A power forward who scores a lot, who is willing to throw the gloves off and do something. And who, when he was drafted, I don't think even the most overly optimistic Sens fan saw him as this guy, a 30 to 35, maybe in his best years, a 40 goal scorer. I don't think that was on the table for most people. And he's already at 200 goals. Whereas Matthew, I guess he's a unicorn, but only in the sense that he's a pest. He's not as tough. He'll go to the corners. He'll fight a little if he has to. He doesn't want to. Like, he's more of a... It's not a perfect comparison, but it's more like Brad Marchand. And you want those guys on your team. They're valuable, and they will score, but they're more pest-like. They're less tough. They fight less. But they'll irritate the piss out of you and then go score 40 or 45 goals, which isn't quite what we would have expected out of Brady. Brady was going to be dad light. Like Keith Tkachuk had 50-goal seasons, but he was the power forward, the bitch in front of the net that you couldn't move, a guy who would crush you into the end boards, right? So they're just different players. And so to find out that Brady got to 200 goals 11 games faster than Matthew was surprising to me. Matthew Tkachuk has played on some great lines with Johnny Gaudreau and down with the Panthers now, whether it be with Barkov or Bennett or Reinhart, like on different power play units. I was legitimately surprised that Brady got there faster. And it's not like Brady's played on bad lines, although his first year or two, the Sens were a little bereft of talent. But now, when you have power play units that feature Giroux and Stützle and Sanderson and whatever, I guess I shouldn't be surprised that he got there on the pace that he did. But I was. I knew the 200th goal was coming up. I wasn't aware that he was going to get there ahead of Matthews. So that's, I don't know, that's interesting to me. And man, that unicorn label, I guess we're using, has perhaps not ever been more appropriate. He's got a much better goal-scoring touch than I think most people would have expected when he was drafted. So, I mean, good on the guy, right? Anyway, back-to-back. 2 wins for the Sens. Another back-to-back coming up this weekend. I imagine that's when you'll see James Reimer debut. But look, as long as the East is going to be... It's starting to spread out a little. But every time you think somebody's down and out, they do something like this. 2 wins in 2 nights. And while you're not right on the doorstep, you've kept yourself... Like a loss to either one of these teams, right? A loss to either the Canucks or the Rangers. You just go, fuck. It's demoralizing. These are bad teams that are spiraling out. The Sens have put them both in the rear view and kept themselves alive. So we'll see how things shake loose here as another back-to-back awaits on the weekend. We'll see what happens. You know, quickly on the Leafs, I guess, before we move off the hockey stuff, yeah, I don't know anybody who didn't smell that Utah loss coming on Tuesday night from a mile away. Look, the Leafs have been good lately. They'd won a bunch in a row. You can't fault them for that. I had sort of thought, and I'd sort of forgotten they play Winnipeg this coming Saturday to end this road trip. And it's a weird road trip. It's not a road trip I'm here to complain about. But Toronto on Saturday, off to Colorado Monday, Utah Tuesday, Vegas Thursday, back up to Winnipeg Saturday, and then home after that. It seems odd, probably not the route necessarily, but it does seem like typically going west, you get an extra day. But we just saw the Sens have to do this a week ago, actually in reverse order. Play Saturday, go out to Utah Monday, have a tight one there, and then get absolutely waxed on the back-to-back in Colorado, which was ugly, but defensible, I suppose, because it's Colorado. The travel thing is the thing that's hung me up a little bit. They didn't get the extra day either. And I know it's not it's not quite like coming home. Going west to east, you basically religiously get 2 days off. It's not always that way going east to west, but it is common, and neither Toronto or Ottawa got it this time. Fair enough. But as far as leafing it up a little bit and being predictable, I don't want to rip them too much. They've been really hot and, deserve the benefit of the doubt a little bit. But as I said, Ottawa goes in, plays tight against Utah, and then gets their shit kicked in the next night on the back-to-back by Colorado. You kind of go, well, Colorado does that to teams. Toronto went out, beat Colorado in a really well-played game, really entertaining game that I would have enjoyed more if it didn't start at 10 o'clock. That's a thing. Look, let's not get bogged down again. But I will say that's an 8 p.m. start in Colorado and an 8 p.m. start in Utah as opposed to the normal 7 or 7:30. Sometimes I think this is intentional. I know the teams don't make the schedule, but they do get to weigh in. They do get to make suggestions and whatever else. To be playing that many 8 p.m. games on weeknights out there, that is to drag, not the fans, although the fans hate it too, but the teams on short rest and adjusting to the time zone a little bit later into the evening. You won't convince me otherwise. But Toronto goes out, beats Colorado, and then gets their asses handed to them by Utah the next night on the back-to-back. Like I said, the reverse of the way the Senators did it. It was fairly predictable. I didn't think it was going to be 6-1 like it turned out to be, but I did text with a couple people that day. People kind of fired up about how the Monday night game against Colorado went. And I just, can't you smell it coming? Can't you? And some of that you think is just trauma. And every team has it. It's not unique to Leaf fans, but you know your team a little bit. And sometimes it comes off a little over the top. Sometimes it comes off a little cliched. But you're like, oh, this is exactly the type of game where my team would drop the transmission. And sure enough, after getting 2 points in Denver, you get just blown out by Utah on Tuesday night on the back-to-back, which was unfortunate, mainly for Dennis Hildeby, who's been really good, like well above what anybody could have expected. He wasn't getting any help in front of him. Mike Johnson on the broadcast throughout the first period kept pointing out, like, he's giving you a chance. Get your feet moving, get going a little bit. And I'm tired. I've, as I said off the top, kind of been sick, recovering here, feeling mostly better, but still tired. I just want to go to bed. And I did stay up through the first intermission. And when Utah scored, I believe it was Dylan Guenther, scored the second and third goal, if I'm not mistaken. When he made it 3-0, I was like, nah, I'm out. Like, that's enough. I already suspected this was coming. Maybe I'll wake up in the morning feeling the fool that the Leafs came back, made it interesting. Womp. No, that is not what happened. Utah continued to roll. But look, as I watched the extended highlights, certainly as I watched the first, Matthews was still going, and that's encouraging. And look, the Leafs lost. They lost bad. You don't love to see that, or I don't. Maybe you do. But his reemergence has been, man, something to behold. Something of a switch being flipped. And I don't know where he's going to finish. I don't know how this is all going to turn out. Is it just a hot streak, or are we starting to see him get back to what he was 2 years ago? I'm not sure yet. But look, it's been really interesting to see him going. And he was going, scored in that Colorado game, played hard against McKinnon's tough matchup, and he's known to be a good defensive guy. And the thing is, you're starting to see him with the stick lift again, the takeaways again. He's starting to skate more comfortably. Certainly the shot we've all seen has sort of circled back around. And again, I don't know if this is permanent, but it's the, like, I was complaining over the last few weeks, could you stop using him like Jordan Staal, where he's just getting shit blasted off his ankles all the time because you're constantly starting him in the defensive zone and whatever else. And yeah, of course this guy can't skate. The inside of his ankles are just repeatedly getting pounded by point shots and this and that. You're going to have to find a way to lighten the load a little bit for him. And once that happened, he's skating really well. And look, certainly that's not the only reason. That's not the only thing. But his sort of up and down here has been really interesting, because I remember talking about it last year where he disappeared and he went to Germany and he just never looked right. Didn't ever look terrible, but compared to his own standards, he clearly wasn't up to snuff. And you're like, well, hopefully an off season is enough to, help him heal up or whatever else. And the start he got off to, you're like, oh no. And we were having very real conversations about, is this the new normal for Auston Matthews? Like, if an offseason didn't do it, he's not going to heal up playing this condensed schedule that everyone is playing during an Olympic year. Is this just what he is now? And then he did seem to just get over it midway through the season. He had the injury where he was gone for a bit. But suddenly he looks a lot more like himself, which is a good sign if you're a Leaf fan. We are entering the beginning of Marner week. I'm going to save most of that for the Monday morning show with Rob. He's always very objective when it comes to the Leafs. No doubt he'll continue that. But the Leafs play Vegas on Thursday night, and it's interesting. Again, if you want to buy into schedule conspiracy theories, you could make one here for Marner. And I'm far less likely to buy into this one, but if you wanted to, you could. Vegas is on the road on Wednesday night. I forget where. I think they're in LA, while Toronto is in Vegas. They'll play on Thursday night, and then Toronto will get on a plane and head home. Head to Winnipeg, as previously mentioned. And then the Leafs have a rare Friday night game next Friday against Vegas, where Marner makes his return to Toronto. But Vegas plays on night somewhere else and flies in late. So if you wanted this to be easy for Marner, if you wanted him to never have to face Toronto media, no morning skates, no practices in either market. It's both on the back end of back-to-backs. He's going to skate on this mostly, although he did do an interesting interview with Jonas Siegel from The Athletic. I had a lot of thoughts on that. Again, we'll save them for Sunday. But we are entering a 10-day stretch where there'll be a lot of Marner talk, I think, throughout the media here. Look, I thought about throwing some UFC talk into this episode. I'm going to save it because our buddy Bunda will be back on the show next week, and that's in a more appropriate venue for that. But it has been a wild day around the UFC. They are starting on Saturday, the 24th, a brand new relationship. They've gone off pay-per-view, and all their big shows will be on Paramount+. So if you're a UFC fan that's used to having to pay $40, $50, $60 a month for a pay-per-view every month. Like, if you want to watch every fight, and there are people out there who are hardcore like that. It's not me. I am no longer an every month kind of guy, and even on a lot of the months now, I ask our buddy Bunda for one of his magical links, so I don't have to pay. But if you were one of those guys doing it legit every month, $50 a month for every month, it's insane. Now you get your $10 a month on Paramount Plus, and you get it all. It's a huge win if you are a UFC fan. I should state, for the moment, that's US only. In Canada, it's still on Sportsnet or on Bunda's Magical Links. But that will change as the Sportsnet as deals worldwide roll out. But point being, this is a massive weekend for the UFC as they start this new relationship with Paramount Plus, and they had loaded up that card pretty well. Then all of a sudden, the title fight between Kayla Harrison and Amanda Nunes gets called off as Kayla Harrison has a serious neck injury. It sounds like she's going to have surgery. So huge blow to that. That was announced earlier today, Wednesday, depending on when you're listening to this. And then not too long afterwards, Alex Pereira announces he's going to move up from light heavyweight to heavyweight. After having recently already moved up from middleweight to light heavyweight, he's going to drop the light heavyweight title, just hand it back and go fight at heavyweight. So big news around the UFC, but we're going to save that for next week. I did want to touch briefly, and this is dangerous, on some baseball because, look, we're all waiting right now. It sounds like the Kyle Tucker news can't be all that far off. In fact, it scares me to even be bringing this up right now because just in the time it takes to do the show and hit the edit and, get it dropped, things could change. This is all moving really fast. But that was the big story on Wednesday, was the Mets had suddenly become a bit more serious about this. Apparently it offered him $50 million per year for 3 years on a short-term deal. where he would have opt-outs and could re-enter the market afterwards. The Dodgers, I guess, are still lurking. And still on the Mets, it sounds like on Wednesday they did bump their offer to 4 years, which, again, doesn't matter as long as all these opt-outs and stuff are in anyway, right? Like, it could be a 1-year deal like we just saw with Bregman, or some of these guys are doing this and opting out and going back into the market. And maybe that wouldn't be the worst idea for Kyle Tucker, because next year's free agent class is absolute ass. So if he's not seeing the offers he wants right now, or if the only offer he's seeing right now that he is interested in terms of money and term is from Toronto, and he doesn't want to go to Toronto, maybe you take a 1-year deal or a short-term deal from the Red Sox, the Mets or the Dodgers, and jump back in next year. Now, there are some people out there saying that he's not enjoyed this process. He doesn't like being a free agent. He just wants to get his security, get his money, and go where he's going to go and be there for quite a while. When I say maybe he doesn't want to be in Toronto, that's just me spitballing. I haven't heard that. Nobody is reporting that. But it's a possibility that we have to at least consider. And when someone's offering you $50 million a year with a chance to go out and see if you can find something better long-term in a year or two, would be tough to turn down. But that's what we're all waiting on right now, and we'll see. There's a lot of people saying, Bob Nightingale reported, for whatever you think of his reputation, that this is all a scare tactic to the Blue Jays. He wants the long-term deal. He's willing to go to Toronto, but put this one last scare into them, see if it squeezes another $5 or $10 million per year out of them, and then sign it. We'll see. But the big news of the day on Wednesday came from the Red Sox, who I tried on the Monday show. I got a couple of comments from you guys. Sometimes you read the show pretty well. That I kept trying to talk about the Red Sox and Rob kept trying to force it over to the Blue Jays. A lot of people speculating on why that was, but I was legitimately trying to have a conversation about the Bregman thing and them leaving. Look, they have somewhat made up for that with a really nice signing on Wednesday of left-handed pitcher Ranger Suarez. It's 5 years, is $160 million. There will be no one happier about that than Fromer Valdez, who I think most people believe is better than Ranger Suarez and can now say, well, I'm not taking less than that. It doesn't really help the Red Sox offensively, obviously. But man, all of a sudden, that's a tight-looking rotation. Those guys are going to run out Garrett Crochet, Sonny Gray, and Ranger Suarez in some order as their top three. And after that, they've got some and not to mention Patrick Sandoval coming back. That rotation is going to be really tough. It's possible they will now use some of that pitching depth because they've got a few different pieces they can plug in at 4-5 and depth there in the rotation, and use that to go and find some more batting help. We'll see. It sounds like you're not hearing much anymore about them and Bo Bichette. That seems to be leaning Phillies, if you want to trust the rumor mill and what we're hearing. There's no way to know for sure. And frankly, if Bo's not coming back to Toronto, and that now seems very unlikely, I would like to see Bo leave the American League East. So if he becomes a Philly, that'd be fine with me. Assuming he's not coming back, which would still be my number one preference. But the way the infield looks right now and the way they're set up, I can't imagine that's still on the table. But all of a sudden, the Red Sox, they've sort of redeemed themselves a little bit. This is the longest contract that they have signed, and this has been the holdup for a while, as the Red Sox all of a sudden became really adverse to signing long-term deals. And you can't get big-name free agents to come if you're not going to commit long-term. So this 5-year deal with Ranger Suarez is the longest since 2022 when they signed Trevor Story, which was a nice deal. Leave it up to you what you've thought of how that's turned out, but this is the longest one since then. And look, I'd like to see these guys stop landing in the AL East if they're not going to land in Toronto. Baltimore has had a pretty decent offseason. We're still waiting on the Yankees. You know they're going to do something. It's a meme from The Simpsons there. What was that one? Just look at the little guy, Marge. He hasn't done anything yet, and you know it's going to be cool. Did they just go back to Bellinger? Are they lurking in the weeds on Bo or on Tucker? Doesn't sound like it, but you never know. But, if these guys aren't coming to... It's like I said with Bo. If you're not coming back to Toronto, piss on out of the AL East. If you want to go play for the Phillies in the NL, that's fine with me. But there are still countless guys. The Yankees just went out and traded for Weathers today, and it's a nice piece. Like, that guy will fit nicely in their rotation. I don't like to see that. Lots of moving parts here still. We'll see how this is all going to shake loose with Tucker, with Bo, with Fromer Valdez. A lot of pieces still to land. And it sort of seems like we're still stuck in this place where a lot of guys are waiting on the big boys to fall. And then a lot of the kind of middle of the ground guys will have to move after that. That would probably be irritating to me if I was one of them, one of those free agents saying, spring training starts in less than a month. The Jays put out their dates. The pitchers and catchers have to retire, report on the 11th of February. Position players on the 16th, I believe it was, unless you're going to the World Baseball Classic, in which case you have to report on the 12th because, you're going to piss off out of town early. They want to get some work in for you, get a look at you. But it's less than a month away before your year starts. And if I'm stuck waiting for somebody to move, whether it's Bo or Tucker or Valdez, fuck off. Like, I don't like the idea that people kick around every baseball offseason saying there's got to be a window, there's got to be a deadline, there's got to be whatever. We can't have this every year. I don't like that because I think it limits. I think it's the player that suffers, not the team. I think the player has the right to draw this out as long as they want to, but it inevitably holds up younger guys, not necessarily younger guys, but more middle-of-the-road guys who are still perfectly good Major League Baseball players, but who aren't going to move until the big stars move. And increasingly, the big stars are willing to wait and wait and wait, and you end up with this major backlog. So, irritating to us as fans, and no doubt to them as players who, hey, where do I live next month? Hello? I have a family who'd like to know what state I live in. Seems like a reasonable thing to want to know. We'll wrap it up there. It has been, as I said off the top, a quiet week around here. Like I said, I've been a little under the weather. I feel like I've mostly kicked it. Not sure there'll be anything else this week. We'll sort of wait and see if the news warrants another show. But this will, as it looks right now, be the quietest week we've had around here in quite a long time. So I do apologize for that, but sometimes it happens, right? So we'll wrap it up here. We may or may not see you tomorrow. If not, we'll be back on Monday with Rob. Bunda's coming back up soon. Kevin Mickey coming back up soon. We've got a couple of guests here right around the corner. We look forward to sharing all that with you. Thanks so much for listening. My name's Matt Robinson. We'll talk to you next time.
Yo,